Brewers came back from a road trip, 2-4. Hey, they're 6.5 up on 3 teams in the division. I'll take that. We'll get to that story. Look ahead to the homestand. Recap the road trip. All next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Didn't go well in the final game in Detroit, but they won the first 2, coming off getting swept in Philadelphia. And like I said, a 2-4 road trip, 10-2. They lose on Sunday in Detroit. But considering how this road trip started, I mean, I'll take 2-4. And obviously 3-3 would look a lot better, but 6.5 up. But you got 3 teams still breathing down their necks. We'll get to all that coming up here in a little bit. Big homestand, an update on Robert Gasser, who's going to seek another opinion, all that coming up here in a little bit. Locked On Brewers, good to have you along here. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, brought to you by the folks over at FanDuel. FanDuel brings you this episode. FanDuel, make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $200 bonus bets. Any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. Yeah, on this road trip, it started off horribly for the Brewers. Losing those 3 games in Philadelphia. A couple of those could have went the Brewers' way. But, just Friday night, demolishing Detroit. Coming back after offensively just some terrible days in Philadelphia. They explode. And notwithstanding Tobias Myers throwing one-hit baseball. How about that? I just thought that was great. Freddie wasn't very good, but the bullpen picked him up on Saturday for the win. And Bryce Wilson was not very good. Was probably it was his worst start of the season on Sunday. But it was one of those games where Skubal, the pitcher for the Tigers, he's throwing 102 out there. And the Brewers we're not going to win that game. It's just one of those games where, if you've seen enough Brewers baseball, sometimes in baseball, it's just not in the cards. And this one wasn't. They'd won the first 2 games, and they were facing a Cy Young candidate, and it was not in the cards to win this game. So, 6.5 game lead on 3 teams, the Cardinals, Cubs, and the Charging Reds, who are going to be here next weekend. So you look at it, and they got the Blue Jays coming up here, and then you got the Reds coming in next weekend. This is going to be a big homestand for the Brewers. We'll get to what the Jays coming up here in a little bit, but the Brewers, again, it was such a horrible start to the road trip, and you're thinking, man, this could be really a disaster. And I'm looking for the positive on this. Coming back and winning the first 2 games of Detroit after what it was like in Philly, and Detroit's not a bad team. Losing on Sunday, yeah, none of us were happy about that, but I was encouraged with Tobias Myers on Friday night and coming out and really pitching well. And you score 10 runs in a game, and that somehow masks your starting pitching. But it was great to see the Brewers explode offensively. But man, what Myers did was fantastic. Peralta had just a bad outing. But the bats picked him up. Most importantly, the bats picked him up. Wilson, 4 2/3, third time through the order. The Tigers got to him, and that was just a bad day at the office for him. The Brewers have not hit a home run in 5 straight games. That's a problem. This is where I said the Brewers need a power hitting outfield. I said this last week. Power hitting outfielder, maybe in right field. But they go through these where they just go through games without hitting home runs or hitting at all. But they've gone, again, 5 straight homers. Wouldn't worry too much about it, but they got a good Jays team coming to town. A Jays team that's starting to catch fire a little bit. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. I also want to get to Robert Gasser. That he's going to have a third opinion on that elbow. I'm really worried about this because one of the opinions I forget the doctor's name, said that, hey, you need, and I believe it was the second opinion, that, he recommended surgery. Now, anytime you have surgery on that elbow, the elbow is not torn. The UCL is not torn, but they recommended surgery in there, and the UCL is not broken at all. Now, what I'm worried about here is that he's had elbow issues so far early in his career. Is this going to be a case where if he doesn't get this thing fixed and cleared up, that it's going to be a problem long term? Now, obviously, when you're an athlete, you always want to avoid injury, especially or surgery. I said you always want to avoid surgery, but in this case, for a pitcher especially, you always want to really avoid elbow, shoulder, any type of arm surgery. And I'm just wondering, Gasser getting this third opinion, just reading it, if that's eventually what's going to be needed here. And if it's needed to clean it up and he's got to bounce back and take the year off, okay. I don't like it, but it appears to me, of course, I'm not a doctor, but if you have elbow injuries this early in your career, that's something that's eventually, is that elbow eventually just going to go? Do you need surgery right now to prevent that from happening? I don't know, but he's seeking a third opinion. So when you seek a third opinion on something, I mean, a second opinion is one thing, but a third opinion means that they're probably really considering surgery on this, I would guess. My belief on that would be, because maybe they're turning this third doctor that he's going to say, well, this is something you really need to do through this type of rehab. But there's something in that elbow that they're not happy with. And when surgery is recommended by one of the doctors, that could be a problem. But we'll monitor that. And again, I worry about Gasser because he's got such a bright future. As we know, we've seen him pitch. We've been talking about him, the prospect. Some of us wanted him on the opening day roster in that 5-man rotation right away. But when he got cut out, came up here, and he's been great. Was not so good a week ago, Saturday, in his outing. Obviously, it was one of his worst. It was his worst outing of the year. And then we find out he's having elbow issues. But we'll hang tight on that third opinion and see what it is. But let's keep our fingers crossed. Again, but if he needs surgery to fix something this early in his career, you might as well. I would hate for him to do something that, maybe down the road here, that would tear the UCL and he needs Tommy John and all that. I don't know. But anytime you're flirting with that UCL and talking about surgery this early in his career, and he had the bone spurs already, it's not a good thing. But best of luck to Robert Gasser, and just for him personally. The Brewers, obviously, it's not good news to get one of your top pitching prospects, especially a left-hander, looking at surgery. But we'll see where he goes from here. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Coming up, we're going to look at the newest member of the Milwaukee Brewers. Brewers picked up a pitcher, much needed, and a big homestand coming against the Jays, beginning with the Jays coming up on Monday. And the Jays starting to turn their season around a little bit, a tough American League East. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit, here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com, SupplyHouse.com, the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources, the latest product info to get your job done right. Shop the heavy and complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands. Get your order delivered right to your door. Fast shipping, coast to coast, wherever you are in the country, you're going to get your fast shipping. Need help with an order? Expert support industry-leading service, the friendliest folks in the business. Talk to a real person every time you need to with SupplyHouse.com. Pros in the skilled trades can get competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from a free membership at SupplyHouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies from everywhere. Just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Also, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. I was telling you about FanDuel at the top. Summertime is here. NBA Finals going on. Stanley Cup Finals going on. Baseball, of course. Right now, new customers, they've bumped it up to $200 in bonus bets. $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Right now, take advantage of this. $200. You could use that to bet on everything. Finals MVP, props, you name it. Who's going to hit one out of the ballpark? That sort of thing. Maybe you want to go on Boston Moneyline in the NBA. They're up 2-0. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com. And again, you get that new customer. Sign up for the $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. But again, you're going to have to use that promo code FanDuel.com/lockedon and win big this summer. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Laser Hernandez becomes a Milwaukee Brewer, made one start with the Dodgers, the former Florida Marlin. Been there with since 2018. I want to say 2018, 2019. Made one start with the Marlins last year. Pitched out of the bullpen on Sunday. The Brewers are going to build him up a little bit. And I'm sure we'll probably see him make a start somewhere down the road. And, just help out this rotation. Hernandez, they'll build him up, get him going a little bit. Could be a situation where he could make one of those starts where they have the opener and then Hernandez come on and pitch. But they're going to do what they've done to Bryce Wilson in the during spring training. They're going to build up his innings. So, again, no risk, 1-year deal for Hernandez. You have no choice at this point. So good move. We'll see if he can come in and give them some innings. Now, the Brewers have done this in the past where it's worked out for a couple of starts. So we'll see. Brewers need to patch things together. DL Hall put on the 60-day injured list at knee. That's just what a terrible run of bad luck, we'll call it, for DL Hall this year. And, it just had not been all that impressive in his first couple of starts. And in his growth process as a pitcher, having to go through this knee thing, things got, it's not a shoulder or an elbow, but this knee, and he's on the 60-day IL right now. Jacob Junis, hopefully, they need, and Hall, we're still monitoring them as they're going through their rehabs. Those guys are moving closer to a return as well. So hopefully they keep on ramping up where they're going. But Junis and Hall we won't see for a while. Junis and Hernandez is going to get some starts here down the road. Again, I don't think he'll start. I think they'll probably again use an opener, but they're going to build him up. You saw him pitch an inning on Sunday. But Monday, Colin Ray gets the opener. It looks like Myers is going to pitch Wednesday. Tuesday, the Brewers have not named their starting pitchers. So they're going to Colin Ray Monday. Tuesday is TBA, and Wednesday is Myers. I'm sure we'll know maybe Monday afternoon, perhaps Monday night after the game, which direction we're going to go on that. So you got the Blue Jays coming back. And again, Blue Jays, with the way the schedule is here, you got the Blue Jays at home this year. Real cool. Now, the Blue Jays in that tough American League East, now they're only a game under the 500 mark. They're 32-33. They're 13 back. And the Jays not only 2 games out of the wild card chase, I think that's the way they look at it, because obviously nobody. Well, maybe Baltimore could catch the Yankees, but I mean, Yankees and the Orioles are so far ahead of the pack. Those teams are 20 games over the 500 mark. The Yankees 25 games over, Baltimore 20 games over. So Toronto at 32 and 33. They're not catching those two. So they're thinking in terms of wild card. And the Blue Jays just coming off a series. They won an extra innings in Oakland on Sunday. They made a move over the weekend. Biggio, who has been with that franchise for 9 years, 6 years on the major league level, they surprisingly DFA'd him. They said, we're going in a different direction offensively, and they cut their losses with Biggio. So it was a big road trip for the Blue Jays, because the Blue Jays could become sellers if they go in the other direction. There's reports over the weekend that the Cubs are interested in Vlad Guerrero, who's not putting up the MVP like numbers he was in 2021. Remember that year he hit 41 home runs and was like second in the MVP running. It has not been quite those type of numbers at all. This year, 294, 7 home runs. His unorthodox swing, just like his dad. He's got that big hitch in the swing, that big wild swing. But 7 home runs, 294. The Jays haven't signed him to a contract extension. Same with Bo Bichette. Haven't signed either one of those two guys to a contract extension. And it appears the Cubs are interested. The Cubs called up and said, hey, we're interested in Vlad Guerrero. We'll see what happens there. If the Blue Jays are willing to deal, but it's still early. It's it's early June, and they're in the wild card hunt. So I'd be surprised if they traded Vlad Guerrero anytime soon, especially since they've crawled within 1 game of the 500 mark and only two games out in the wild card chase. But Bob Nightingale reported that over the weekend that the Cubs are interested in Vlad Guerrero, and this is the exact reason why Craig Counsell went to Chicago, because this is the kind of move that the Cubs can make, but the Brewers can't make. The Cubs can go out there and trade for Vlad Guerrero and obviously sign him to a contract extension if they feel that obviously they're a big part of their future. That's why they'd make the move. We do not want Vlad Guerrero in this division. I know it's 294, 7 home runs, not a great year for him. I think he's just got a lot of talent. He does, just a lot of ability, a lot of talent. He's better than that. Guerrero should be one of the best players in the league. That's the kind of ability he has. The 48 home runs he hit in 2021. I'm sure pitching has made an adjustment against that guy. I would love to have him with the Milwaukee Brewers. Would love to have a guy like that in our system, on our major league team, but we don't want to see him get traded to the Cubs. Keep him in the American League. But the Jays turning things around. They're looking for some offense. Their offense has not been great. Struggled offensively. They called up one of their top prospects, Spencer Horwitz. That's why they sent Biggio down. They called up Horwitz, so they put him right in the lineup, and he's playing in the lineup right now. But the Jays have won 9 of 13, and they were like 6 under the 500 mark on their road trip when it started. But now they're a game under, and just reading some of the pieces about the Jays, they're looking to move over the 500 mark, and they're looking to come into Milwaukee and keep things rolling. So hopefully the Brewers can build out of taking 2 of 3 this past weekend with Detroit. Coming back, a very special birthday to a former Brewer who should be in the Hall of Fame. We'll get to that coming up next to close it out. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Locked On Brewers, brought to you in part by LinkedIn. Are you, as you head to work here on a Monday, are you struggling to close deals? We have a lot of sales guys out there, I know, listening to us, watching our videos on YouTube. And by the way, we'll talk about that coming up here in a little bit. Are you struggling to close deals? B2B selling is tougher than ever. That's why I want to tell you about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn Sales Navigator a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage in high-value customers, drive higher revenue, increase sales performance. Sales Navigator helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as job changes or which counts you should prioritize, and shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform. Who's not on LinkedIn? We all are. Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data, enabling you to unblock conversations with the people that matter. So right now, try this LinkedIn Sales Navigator, 60-day free trial, no obligation, 60-day free trial, linkedin.com/lockedon, linkedin.com/lockedon for that 60-day free trial. LinkedIn Sales Navigator will help you sell like a superstar today. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Happy 73rd birthday to Dave Parker. Dave Parker, who built his greatness with the Pittsburgh Pirates on those 70s Pirates team and came here to the Milwaukee Brewers in 1990, 1 year before they traded him, and he finished his career with the Angels. But and they traded him for Dante Bichette, who ended up upgrading his career once he went to the Colorado Rockies. The Brewers left him unprotected in an expansion draft in the early 90s. But Dave Parker, 73 years old, going through some health issues. 1 year with the Brewers, the Cobra was. 1990, made the All-Star team. It wasn't a very good team. It was a team that got off to a great start. They were like 15-6 or 15-7. Ended up losing 90 games. But Dave Parker was the All-Star on that team. And, man, he was great. Designated hitter. And he was a big positive influence on a lot of younger guys on that team. But he should be in the Hall of Fame. How is Dave Parker? And if you're of a certain age, you'll know Dave Parker was the man in Major League Baseball in the late 70s. Was the man. I mean, if you would have told me when that guy was putting back-to-back MVPs in the late 70s that Parker would not be in the Hall of Fame someday, I thought he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer. The guy was a 5-tool player at one point. Went through some off-the-field issues, but who cares? Dave Parker was one of the best players in baseball. There are players in the Hall of Fame of lesser talent. Ooh, I got so excited there. My microphone. I hit my microphone. There are players in the Hall of Fame of lesser talent than Dave Parker. Won a World Series with the Pirates. This is back when in baseball, before salaries escalated, a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates could win a World Series. And, they were one of the late 70s there. They had a nice little run. Won the World Series in 79, beat the Orioles. And then eventually landed with the Brewers in 1990 toward the end of his career. Late 80s was on those A's teams. But, yeah, Dave Parker, 1 year All-Star, going through some health issues. But, man, Dave Parker should be in the Hall of Fame. Should be in the Hall of Fame. But I'll never forget his 1990 season with the Milwaukee Brewers. Covered it. Was always good to deal with in the clubhouse. And, even though he was an aging player. And, again, he put up some nice years with the A's, too, on those great A's teams of the late 80s. But then he came here. And I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was fantastic at his 1 year here. And then he traded him for Bichette. And that was it. But Dave Parker celebrating. It's hard to believe Dave Parker's 73 years old. Hard to believe he's in the 70s when it just seemed like a couple of years ago that guy was, in the heart of the order of the Milwaukee Brewers. But happy birthday to Dave Parker. He should be in the Hall of Fame. All right. And I think a lot of you guys would back me up on that, especially y'all who grew up watching Dave Parker play with the Pirates. It's going to do it for the show today. Hey, you find us on Google, Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major downloads. I didn't say this earlier in the show. Usually earlier in the show, I go through all the areas where you can get Locked On Brewers. Google, Spotify, Apple, on all the major downloads. We're the number one Brewers podcast on the internet because you great Brewers fans out there. Of course, you go to our YouTube page, search Locked On Brewers on YouTube. Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode. It's all free. Wherever you subscribe to Locked On Brewers, it's all free. It's all coming your way. There's no obligations at all. Please hit me up on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, Freimund. Love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, or whatever. Always feel free to DM me anytime you want. That's the fastest way. If you get a quick question about the podcast or anything else, you can always DM me. I'll get back to you. There's no worry about that. I check all my DMs and everything early in the morning. Locked On Brewers, Chuck Freeman, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Game 1 of the 3-game set with the Jays coming up. 2 night games. Afternoon game coming up on Wednesday. I'll see you out there Tuesday and Wednesday for those games. You see me around the ballpark. As always, love to say hi to you. Until then, tomorrow night, Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Have yourself a great Monday, everybody.